how do we address it? How do we respond to these issues? And first of all, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, which Mo had already referred to earlier, based on their cybersecurity frameworks and many other excellent documents and resources that they provide. So if you're not familiar with them, take a look at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have plenty of documents that are primarily created for federal deployment, but they can be used in the private sector as well. And they give you a great starting point for anything. But they suggest three things. Develop your defenses for the supply chain based on the principle that your systems will be breached. In other words, don't develop your defenses thinking I'm building a barrier that no one can penetrate, but rather deploy security and assume that you will be breached. And if you do that, what it does is it causes you to step a layer back and to look at that next layer back and say, okay, if that first layer is penetrated, what are my next level of protections? And then if that layer is penetrated, what is my third level of protection? And that's something we call defense in depth in the security industry. So we're making sure that we're looking at the possibility of a breach and what does that expose and how can we protect what is exposed. Second, cybersecurity is never just a technology problem. It's a people, processes, and knowledge problem. So when we look at this, we can't just say, hey, I've got great encryption or I have great authentication or something of that sort and say, I now have security. But rather, we have to look at the people as well. And many times, in fact, attacks are launched through the people and not through the technologies, using things that we call social engineering, phishing attacks, that sort of thing. And finally, security is security. And what they mean by this is simply that the security technologies that are well known and well established should be used within our systems where they apply, rather than thinking, well, we always need something unique. Sometimes you do, and that is very true. But more often than not, it's the same security that everybody needs. Now, the final thing that we have here, the supply chain best practices, is a list of ideas and concepts that you can implement to make sure that you have good security in the supply chain. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail for sake of time, but I do want to mention just a couple of things that are very, very important. And the one I'm going to jump to is number 4, automation of manufacturing and testing processes. When we're dealing with our security, particularly, security for manufacturing and security for testing. By automating it, we're ensuring that the procedure that should be followed is followed. That is to say, if we rely on a human to take 10 steps, they may skip step 3 and 7. But if we have a system that goes through the 10 steps and reports to us, then we know all 10 steps are taken. So there is an area where robots are better than humans, okay? They don't forget steps, and they can report to you if there is a step that's not taken. So a very important thing to suggest is there's something called robotic process automation, or RPA. It's not a bad idea to take that out of what we tend to think of, just automating general processes within manufacturing and within our systems, and think about how do we use that to automate our cybersecurity audit processes? Because if we have a system doing it, systems do what we tell them, and they give us errors when they can't. And we can therefore ensure that we're taking the necessary steps in auditing our cybersecurity. And